One of the ways to sort of distract the brain from this demand avoidance thing is to turn stuff into a game. Because if you gamify it, you get a little bit of the dopamine. So what I like to do is I just make a list of 20 things that I could do in like roughly 10 minutes. And then I roll a D20, a 20-sided die. And then I do the thing that's on there. That's why my plants aren't dead, because occasionally I roll the number that makes me water my plants. Hello, sunshine. It's another beautiful day, and I am Caitlin Fisher, coming at you with an episode about demand avoidance, what it is, why it is frickin' annoying, and prevents you from doing things that you kind of would like to be doing, and one way that a client of mine managed to sort of outsmart it. So, to get started, let's talk about what demand avoidance is. And demand avoidance is, I can best describe it as when I was a kid, like a teenager, say I'm 15 years old, and I'm planning on washing the dishes. I'm like, I see some dirty dishes there. That would make my mom really happy if I clean those dishes. And then she comes home from work and she says, can you wash those dishes? And now I'm like, I was going to, but then you said something. So now I'm fucking mad about it. I do not want to do it now. That's the most simplified version of demand avoidance I can give you. It is when we are directed to do a task, there is a demand, and the brain is just like, well, now I'm not doing it. And that's demand avoidance. Now, there is a whole profile of autism called Pathological Demand Avoidance, or PDA, which it took me a while to figure out because I thought it was talking about public displays of affection. LOL. No, pathological demand avoidance, which just means that demand avoidance thing is basically there at all times trying to ruin your day. And it's a real pain in the ass. Some ways that I have helped clients avoid it, to avoid the demand avoidance, right? To sort of allow themselves to do tasks that they want or need to do without activating this sort of, it just puts you at like an impasse with your own brain. And so you're sitting there and now you're just arguing with yourself and you're like, this is so freaking pointless. I just want to wash my sheets, take a shower, go outside and feel the sun, eat food. And your body's just like, no, you can't do that. So one of the ways to sort of distract the brain from this demand avoidance thing is to turn stuff into a game. Because if you gamify it, you get a little bit of the dopamine. And we love the dopamine. The dopamine is a neurodivergence, just catnip, okay? And neurotypicals also enjoy dopamine, but they seem to be able to get it a lot freaking easier than we do. So some ways you can gamify are, one, there are like whole apps and like websites where you can like turn your chores into like a D&D quest and you get points for doing different tasks around the house. That requires too much upkeep for me. I'm like, no, I'm not logging into a thing and being like, I did the dishes, so I get 5 points and now I can buy a spear. Like, I'm not doing it. That's too much for me. Now I have demand avoidance about that part. So what I like to do is I just make a list of 20 things that I could do in like roughly 10 minutes. And then I roll a D20, a 20-sided die. And then I do the thing that's on there. That's why my plants aren't dead, because occasionally I roll the number that makes me water my plants. Shout out to my plants who have what it takes to thrive in this fast-paced environment, because it's not all of them. Plus my cat keeps eating one. He's just out to kill himself and this plant because it's not safe for cats, but he is determined to eat it. So that's my good little orange boy. And pro tip, if you have an orange cat, get pet insurance. Any other cat, probably fine. Orange cat, they will do something heinously inappropriate that risks their life about once a month. So yeah, this is not sponsored by pet insurance, but if any pet insurance companies are listening and you want to sponsor me, give me some pet insurance and then we can talk. So you gamify it. You can maybe like write down some tasks on like popsicle sticks and draw a popsicle stick and do that thing. Now, the key is that you need to put some fun stuff on that list too. So if it is just 20 chores, you're probably not going to do it. But if it's like 14 chores and 6 fun things, now it is interesting. Now you will play that game. Now you will gamble on the chance that you can go sit and play Animal Crossing or sit and read a book. But if you draw the other one, then you're just going to do dishes for like 10 minutes. That's another thing you can do, is just do it for a set amount of time. And if it's not done, it doesn't fucking matter. Walk away. Go do something else. You made an impact. Rad. So now what my client did, which first of all, in Working Title, which is my book incubator program, so we have like a small cohort of writers who are working on their books of all different genres and shapes and sizes, right? And I can tell when they're doing stuff that they think is wrong because they stop coming to meetings and avoiding me. And I'm like, you're adorable. I'm going to come find you. So I reached out to this client and I was like, hey, I'm making some changes to our group and we're adding a Thursday morning call now. And she was like, oh my God, I'm going to actually be able to make that. So first of all, hurrah for options, because previously all of our calls were at 5:30 p.m. And I realized that people with like, when that's the witching hour for your children that you're trying to feed, you're not coming to a meeting. You're just not. So I added a morning call to be a little more inclusive there. And that has been very helpful. So if you were on the fence about Working Title, and now you know that there's a 10 a.m. morning call available. So she came because it was at 10 a.m. So hurrah, right? That's another thing about demand avoidance, is when there's too many demands, you can just like shut down and not do any of it. So because she couldn't make our regular coaching call time, and because, her home life has been chaotic with like kids and yada, yada, and they're sick and all this stuff, it's life, it happens. But the more that piles on, the less you want to do any of it. So she comes to coaching and she's talking to me and she's like, I'm doing this wrong, but I made a change to what I'm working on. And I'm like, okay, I'm laughing inside because I know what she tells me like is not going to be bad at all. And she thinks she's about to tell me like something horrific, just horrifically terrible about the way that she is using my program. And we do what's called the parking lot, which is a way to help avoid like the shiny object syndrome. So say you're working on the first draft of a book, and then you're asking me a coaching question about how do I get an agent and what do I do when I publish this? I'm going to tell you to put that in the parking lot because it does not pertain to what you're working on right now, which is the first draft of a book. So we can get super bogged down in details about stuff that is not relevant yet, or like a new idea that came up. So she said, I just couldn't leave things parked in my parking lot. So I let myself take like one thing out. And now I alternate which project I'm working on. And that helps my demand avoidance, because if I'm like, okay, it's time to write my book, the demand avoidance will kick in. And then I'll work on, say, poetry and make progress over there because it feels like the distraction from where the demand is. And then if I'm like, okay, I'm going to go work on that poetry book again, then the demand avoidance kicks in and she ends up working on the book. And I was like, that's literally fine. This program is about finding a writing solution that works for you. It's not about following exactly what I say to the letter. That would be boring and probably terrible because not everybody's brain works the way my brain works. I write once a week for 2 or 3 hours. Some of my clients try that and love it. Some of my clients try that and they're like, I want to walk into the sea. I cannot do it. And so they switch to writing maybe 20, 30 minutes in the evenings. I have one member in working title. She writes about half an hour at a time every other night when her partner is putting their kid to bed. So like they trade off bedtime routines, which we love, shared domestic responsibilities. Yes. And she's written like almost 20,000 words, half an hour at a time. And if she was still trying to do it the way I did it, which is like 3 hours at a time on a Wednesday, because that's when I carved out my time to do it, she wouldn't have any words because that doesn't work for her. So the point is, do stuff that makes your brain like it. Hooray. That's the Neurodivergent Creative Podcast. You know my secret now. If you're trying something and your brain's like, this sucks, try it differently. Put a little mustache and some glasses on it. Trick it into thinking that you definitely don't want to be working on your poetry book or the other book that you're working on right now. Dude, I won't tell it if you don't tell it. Like, if it works for you, it works for you. Do I have anything else to say on this? Do you have questions about demand avoidance? Bring them to me. I really just wanted to showcase that client's change that she was able to make to her writing routine. And honestly, I love it. It's like we added another layer to the parking lot. So it's like, if we can go into the parking lot metaphor, that's fine. That's relevant. So imagine you're at the airport. And if you've never been to the airport, I'm going to explain what airport parking looks like. There are different lots at the airport that cost different amounts of money. So the most expensive parking lot at the airport is long-term in a parking structure. So this one is protected from the elements. It is closer to the airport. So this is like the best situational parking lot that you can pay for. And it's, I don't know, $15 a day. And then you have the long-term parking that's like just out in a parking lot. It's like you're at the zoo and you're all the way at the back and it's the middle of summer. So you have to slog your shit all the way up to the airport, but it's cheaper. So maybe that one's like $11 a day. So now there's like a trade-off, right? It's like these are both long-term parking. One's like a little more protected from the elements and is a shorter walk. One has a longer walk and your car's going to bake in the sun or get snowed on, depending on the time of year and where you live. Then there's like short-term parking, which is like I'm just parking because I'm picking somebody up and I don't want to keep circling around. That's very annoying. And all of the little security cop men yell at me to tell me to stop loitering. So like, no, I just went and parked and that's like probably like $10 for 2 hours because parking. So now we've got long-term parking that's like super protected, well-sheltered. We've got long-term parking that is less protected. We have short-term parking that you're just going to kind of go in and out. And then there's like the cell phone lot. And the cell phone lot at an airport is a little parking lot where you go and sit in your car and wait on your phone for the person to say, I just got off the plane. You can pick me up at door number 7. And then you get to go back into the little loopy, right? So rather than putting her poetry book or book B or the blog or whatever her secondary project was, she got that out of the long-term parking. She's like, you're coming with me, bud. I'm putting you in the cell phone lot. Easily accessible, easily called upon when needed. That's totally freaking fine. As long as there is a parking lot, you're using the parking lot. You know, I'm totally great with it. And it makes me laugh so much when my clients are like, oh, Caitlin, I didn't do it exactly how you said. And I'm like, what about me makes you think that I want you to do it perfectly? There's no perfectionism here. We left perfectionism at home, except we didn't. We exercised it. We called a priest and we sprinkled holy water on the perfectionism, and the perfectionism went back to hell where it belongs. So that's pathological demand avoidance and the parking lot, and how you can use the parking lot to trick your demand avoidance. Happy braining, my friends. I love you. And if you haven't yet done my free masterclass, Art is Revolution, you should, because it's dope. And it will help you reframe the way you look at your creative pursuits in this capitalist hellscape that we live in and really preserve and protect the time. You can keep those in the cell phone lot because they're there for you to call on. Okay, this has been wonderful. It is always lovely to hang out with you, and I always want to know what you think about the podcast. So please leave a review, subscribe, share it with your friends, DM me on Instagram and tell me what you thought about it. And also, if you have more demand avoidance hacks, please tell me because they are very valuable and important to me, and I need them, and my clients need them, and the world needs them. So give them to me. Okay, I love you. Bye.